grab a drink and a snack so you don't miss a thing. I'm coming to you from Bozeman, Montana, where we are finally having some nice weather. I have a 7-month-old, and I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that he's been very confused and worried about grass because like all he's known is snow. So it's like, what is this? This is bizarre. Gerald, where are you joining us from today, and how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. I'm very thrilled to jump on here with everyone. I'm just east of Dallas in a town called Rockwall, so Rockwall, Texas, and again excited to be here.
Perfect. We're so happy to have you. Ryan, how about you? Where are you at and how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm in a little town called Pleasant Garden, which is just south of Greensboro, North Carolina. And yeah, I've been looking forward to this. This is going to be a fun call.
Yes, it is. We got some great questions. I think we're going to have some great content. Well, perfect. Well, we're just back the hour, so I'm officially going to launch us. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Amy Arno, and I am the Field and Event Marketing Manager on the XYPN marketing team. Today, I am so glad to host this event, How to Know When It's Time to Go, Top Tips for a Smooth Transition from Your Current Firm, with XYPN members Gerald Hendrick and Ryan Foster. I do want to point out just a few housekeeping items to help everyone out. On the right, the top tab that you see is the chat function, and that is where we will be dropping any resources that we mention. Below in that is the Q&A tab. So if you do have any questions for us to address throughout the session, please submit them there. We do have some questions that were submitted beforehand, so we'll be answering both a mix of those and the questions that are asked live throughout our conversation. At the end, to exit the webinar, please click back to the lobby. You'll see that on the top left of your screen, and that will actually take you to a feedback survey. We would love for you to fill that out. We want to hear more topics of what you want us to address in the future and just hear how we did today. Also, be sure to register for next month's free event, Closing the Deal. Easy to execute strategies RIA owners can use to convert prospects to clients. That is quite the title. With XYPN members Martin Scott and Lacey Rogers. That event will be held on June 7th at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, and you can find the link to register in the chat. Last thing for today, if you are interested in learning more about membership with XYPN but aren't ready for a one-on-one visit, our network navigators host monthly office hours. You can join them May 17th at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. And again, we'll put the link to register in the chat. Okay, enough with the boring stuff. Let's get to the reason all of you joined us today. I would now love to have our panelists introduce themselves. Ryan, will you please tell us a bit about yourself, your firm, and your experience with leaving another employment to launch an RIA?
Yeah, sure. So as was said, my name is Ryan Foster. I've been in the industry for about 16 years now, but prior to starting my own RIA, I worked with a larger retirement plan administrator for about 6 years, helping them develop an individual wealth management division. At that time, with 4 small kids, it was just a great way for me to provide stability for my family with a salary-based job. But in early 2022, so last year, my wife and I, we knew we were being called in a new direction with a family-based ministry focus. And that calling required time, which was something that I had very little of at that point in my life. So for me, stepping out on my own wasn't really about getting away from anything necessarily. It was rather more about freeing up more of my time so that I could move forward towards something that I felt called towards and desired more. It's only been a few months so far, but I can tell you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I know that I made the right choice. It's been a really great decision so far, and I'll tell you, working with XYPN, which we'll talk more about, has been an incredibly instrumental part of my process.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. And congratulations. So exciting.
Thank you.
Gerald, how about for you?
Yeah, Gerald Hendrick. I've been in the industry probably a little over a decade, about 12 years now. And so I've kind of been on all sides of the industry, I would say. I started out with TD Ameritrade, went to a kind of startup tech company, Personal Capital. They're not really new anymore, but they've been acquired a few times. Then went to a independent RIA here in Dallas, and it really gave me an opportunity to see different sides of the industry. And once I got adjusted with the RIA, I was like, this is exactly where I know I want to be here. I don't know if I necessarily want to be with this firm. And so it just started getting I was like, how can I be the best advisor possible? And I stumbled upon XY Planning Network's podcast. Had no clue it was even a possibility to start your own firm from I was like, we're going to need a compliance officer and all this fun stuff that seems very expensive. Found out through the podcast that no, you can start with zero assets. You could start with zero staff, and it's a reality. So just started exploring that in 2021 was my first full year. And like Ryan, no looking back, definitely challenging. And I'm sure we'll get into some of those questions and answers here. But yeah, it's been drinking off a fire hose, but in all the for all the right reasons and going in the right direction. So yeah, absolutely happy to be here and jump into some of these questions.
Perfect. Well, great. Well, I think we have a great one to start with. So my blessing and my curse is that my current job is actually pretty good. It's a blessing in the sense that I enjoy the work, the clients, and the colleagues. It's a curse in the sense that it keeps me from taking the leap into starting a solo firm, which I'm pretty sure is what I ultimately want to do. Any advice on knowing when it's time to leave a good enough job? Gerald, what do you think? You want to weigh in on that first?
I, whoever the question came from, I feel you 100%. I was in a similar situation, and me and my wife had many conversations of, okay, I felt like I wanted to do this, but it has to be the right time for you and your family and circumstances. And so, yeah, when you're in a good position, my one question to him was, how long have you been having these thoughts? Like, has it been 6 months or 6 years? Because again, if it's 6 months, I'd just say pray on it, look for signs, opportunities. But if it's been a long time, it's like, okay, you want to do this. You just need to make the jump, but make sure you have your ducks in order before you make the jump. So yeah, I'd say if it's been a while, you know, leave the good enough job as long as you have that financial runway, because you're just going to keep losing sleep over this decision. um,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, and I'm sure Ryan, you'll have a few things to add on to that, but I think you've made your mind up already.
Yeah. And Gerald, do you want to talk real quick about your financial runway? Like, how does
Oh yeah.
someone determine then what's right with them? Like, what did you do to figure out, like, are we in a spot where I can make this happen?
Yeah, so my circumstances, I'm married, have 3 kids. My wife does well enough to where we weren't just living on one income, right? So, and she's not a doctor or anything making huge amount of money. However, it was good enough where it wasn't going to be a huge setback. What I did was figured out, given what I wanted out of a business, I did want to have an office space, which it requires capital. Um, I knew there was a few pieces of technology that I wanted to use, so I was like, I'll need at least $10,000 to $20,000 per year in expenses. So what I try to do is have 2 or 3 years of expenses ready, available, knowing that if I needed to dip into my 401k, I could, which I actually have dipped into the 401k a little bit, but I see it as an investment. So it's well worth the investment in my opinion. But yeah, that runway, that financial runway, I'd say it's going to be different for everyone, but the good buffer is probably about 20,000 a year,
Yeah.
in my experience and where I'm at, and located here.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. And we do have a first year budget template that we can
Yeah.
drop in the chat that people can start with. I think it's everyone, as you said, is going to be a little bit
Yes.
different, but it's a good jumping off spot to kind of tailor to your own situation.
Absolutely.
Ryan, what do you think? What do you think about knowing when it's time to leave a good enough job, and what did your runway look like?
Yeah, so honestly, I'm going to reiterate quite a bit of what Gerald probably already said, that that's a tough call when you're in a good position and you're just simply wondering if taking the leap is going to be even better. Again, repeating what he may have already said, definitely pray into it. If you're married, this has to be a decision that both you and your spouse make. You can't
Absolutely.
do this on your own. Otherwise, they'll resent you if something goes wrong, or I mean, it just makes the marriage difficult. So make sure both of you are 100% on board. My wife is a stay-at-home mom, and so you'll notice all the books in the background are related to homeschooling. So it was definitely a difficult decision for us financially, because I was leaving a very good job to step out on my own. And so I can tell you, run your numbers. Really, really, really be sure at the end of the day that you've built in cushion, that you've run all your numbers and your figures, and you are confident and comfortable with what the financial outlook will be. Assuming things go well, but at the same time, life is full of second chances, and if things don't work out, at the end of the day, you've got an incredible amount of experience in a wonderful industry that you'll be able to pick up another position somewhere else. So I can tell you that it is one of the most rewarding things to wake up every morning knowing that every ounce of energy you put into this is yours.
Yeah.
And that is hard to compete with, to be honest. So I'm an advocate for it, but you like to say, run your own numbers and make sure that you and both your spouse are on board.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I hear both of you saying too is, the reason to launch your own firm is different than maybe you have a regular job, right? Like, it's definitely not going to be about the money at first, because you're not going to be making very much. Like, you might take a job because it pays really well, but building your own firm, like, it's not going to pay really well, but you have a different reason for why you do it. So I think that's something that Alan and Maddie always say too, is like, define your why and hang on to that. Like, every day when you wake up, like, if it's to serve clients that you have a calling to, or if it's to have a better work-life balance, like, that is really what's going to drive you through some of the harder times. Would you guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
And that's another thing that gets you out of bed in the morning and helps push that drive is when you go and you work at a firm or for a larger firm or just a typical job, you're kind of just waking up for the grind. But when you wake up with a vision or a calling or a purpose that you sort of control to a certain degree because it's your firm, it makes it a lot more exciting, makes it a lot more fun, and it makes it a lot more rewarding. So I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's talk more about compensation. So we have a question on what are the ways that the compensation of becoming and owning an RIA can justify leaving multiple millions on the table from BD, deferred comp, and buyout plans. So I guess, how do we feel about wrapping your mind around what your compensation is going to be? Ryan, do you want to kick us off with that one?
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't have multiple millions that I was stepping away from. So I can't speak to personal experience with that part of it, but I do completely appreciate the question. And I would tell you, again, going back to running the numbers, that's going to be a big part of it. But it's more than just, at least let me speak personally for myself, it's more than just money. There's a huge amount of work-life balance, quality of life that factored into my decision, and you can't put a price on that. So,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if you're stepping away from something to step into an opportunity that increases and enhances your quality of life, do it every time. Life's too short to only work for money. And I'll tell you, over time, I have a feeling if you are honest with yourself and you run the numbers, you'll find that what you're leaving behind will more than be made up for in time when you own your own firm. 100% of the payouts are yours. 100% of the value of the firm is yours. You're not having to split that with anybody. So typically speaking, I think you'll find that even financially, the benefits outweigh the costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Gerald, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good problem to have. And I'll tell you this, that I came from corporate America too, working with TD Ameritrade, and that is these comp plans are designed to kind of handcuff you. I mean, when I walked away, you walk away from 2 or 3 years worth of stock options or whatever that type of compensation is. So that's the goal for your firm, and it's working because you're having these type of questions. But again, not to be say the same exact thing as Ryan, but when it comes to my corporate job, I never got to take and pick up my kids from school. I never got to see their teachers or do. Occasionally you can get away and do donuts with dad or something of that nature. But again, I pick up my kids almost every single day from school. I take them to school every single day. Those little conversations on the way to school, I mean, again, are well worth it to me. I don't think from a compensation standpoint, at least for probably 5 years, it can justify leaving what you have on the table. So again, I think you do have to kind of shift gears in your mind a little bit, because if you just keep it focusing on the compensation, you're probably never going to be able to justify leaving a few $1 million on the table. Because I'll tell you what, that first year, I started with a $0 book. Like I didn't bring a bunch of clients on. I knew I might have clients that will hire me pretty quickly, but I thought I would get started a lot faster than I did, and it was a reality check when first year I'm like, wondering where where all the money I thought I was going to be coming in was. So yeah, first you take it's true take one step back to take a few steps forward, but it does take a little bit of time. So that's why again, going back to the previous question, that runway is important. Running your
Yep.
numbers is important. But man, yeah, that's tough when you trying to justify leaving a few $1 million on the table. So yeah, again, good problem to have.
Yeah, right. And they might just get to a point too where it's like there is no amount of money that makes it worth staying.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see. Well, I do want to talk a little bit about the logistics of launching a firm when you are employed. So, what did it look like for both of you? So you have this idea in your mind of, okay, I know I want to launch a firm. What did you start with while you were still employed? How long did you stay employed while you're working on this? Did you join XYPN and then quit? Like, kind of walk us through what those logistics look like. I think a lot of people want to understand how it actually looks in practice. Gerald, do you want to walk us through that for you?
Yeah, so I got introduced to Kendra, who is with XY Planning Network, and she is absolutely phenomenal. She helped me and gave me timelines of filing paperwork with the state, and so um, Kendra was fantastic. But I guess one thing that I regret is probably leaving my job a little too early. Um, I didn't realize that with the state of Texas, things just can, I mean, and with every state, they're all a little bit different when you file your paperwork. But, I was so excited. And continued working at my job for probably 3 months into kind of doing all this on the back end. But I probably should have stayed for another at least 2 months or so, not only to collect the paycheck, but I was pretty dang bored. I was golfing, and it only takes so long to create a website. But it took, I think, from start to finish about 6 months. I was hoping it would take about 90 days, and it's one of those things. I, if I could do it all over again, I would have waited until I got approved, then put my 2 weeks in to launch my own firm. And I
Okay.
don't know exactly the time frames because it's been 2 years now.
Yeah.
But again, that'd probably be my one regret is just I stepped away a little too early, and that's 3 months worth of pay. And when you're not working, you're usually spending money too. So
Yeah. Was there any concern that you had with, like when you filed the business name with the state of Texas? Were you worried about your firm finding that somehow, or was that not a big deal with your specific company?
Well, I was actually. I was like, they're going to find out somehow. They're going to let me go. They're going to be pissed because I wasn't being upfront and honest with them. But with the way the filing works in the state of Texas, at least, and I think this is nationally, is nothing becomes public when you're just going through the paperwork process. So, and again, I was leaning on Kendra quite a bit, and I know there's the entire team is fantastic, but Kendra, again, lean on XY Planning Network if you are debating going through this process because they will give you any and all the answers that you have. Because if you're thinking it, they've heard it 100 times already. I'll tell you
Yep.
that.
Yep. So you joined XYPN, started the initial registration process, stayed on for about 3 months. Then we're in the process of getting approved by Texas. They took a little bit longer. You quit, then had about 3 months before you got approved. Do I
Yeah,
have that right? Okay.
exactly.
Perfect. Ryan, how about you? What did it look like for you?
And my situation, I know, is probably a little different than most. I told my employer 9 months in advance
Oh,
what was happening. But again, I was stepping not away from them, but toward something else. And so our deal and our arrangement ended up being that I would do everything in my power to transition. It was about 80% of the clients over to new advisors who would take my place. And then I would step away and only take about 20% with me. to go on and then do the ministry I was looking to do. So like I said, I know my situation is a little different, but I can at least speak to the timeline of things that it takes time, and be ready for that. We all hope that, well, in about 30 days, we'll have this all knocked out and it'll be over. You may do your part in 30 days, but Gerald's right. There are so many things that are completely outside of yours and even XYPN's control that you're just sitting, twiddling your thumbs, waiting on regulators for your paperwork to make it to the top of their pile. And some things went quick and I was surprised, and then other things took significantly longer than I would have ever imagined. And that's just part of the process. So do make sure to build in plenty of time for the process. Little plug though, I've got to say for XYPN and for Kendra in particular, I could have, let me rephrase this. I was going to say I could have never done it. I could have done it on my own. It would have taken me 3 times as long. I would have made so many mistakes along the way. I mean, there were just simple little things that they knew to do, or processes they knew to take, steps in certain order that I would have done them completely out of order, and it would have been a mess. So I was incredibly grateful for their experience and expertise. They paid for themselves 10 times over in just that process alone of getting things set up in an organized way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. That's super helpful. So we talked about that you might have some extra time on your hands. So do you have some suggestions? So if someone's like really gung-ho, I want to hit the ground running, what else can they be doing in this time frame? Obviously you can work on a website, it can't be public until you're approved, but should they be working on blog content? Should they be interviewing people in their niche? Like, what can someone do if they're ready to like really get after this? Ryan, do you have some ideas of maybe things that you did or suggest?
And my situation, again, I know a little different because as soon as I opened my firm, I already had a book of business that moved over with me. So it wasn't quite as much about marketing at that point. But you can do a lot to just get your ducks in a row. Even with the clients I was moving, we had all the paperwork ready to go. We had all the procedures and processes established. We just had to flip the switch. And then as soon as we were approved, it was legal, then I started sending everything out. And once that happened, I was surprised. We had probably 95% of the accounts moved over within 3 weeks. I mean, it was shocking to me how fast it all happened. But I had spent a lot of time in advance preparing everything for that switch to flip. But if there's like a certain niche or a market that you want to go after, or a new direction you're going to be going, and there's nothing wrong, and there's nothing that's outside of compliance that says you can't begin preparing those marketing pieces. You can't begin preparing those campaigns and get everything lined up and ready to go so that as soon as it's legal, you just hit the ground running at 100 miles an hour.
Yep. Oh, that's super helpful. Thank you. Gerald, what do you think?
Yeah, so and quite opposite of Ryan, I was, sitting with a book that was going to have I didn't have to transfer paperwork to work on, unfortunately. And so, and I knew I wanted to do this. And so a lot of mine, I've been networking for quite a while in certain areas with certain chamber of commerces and with certain, Rotary groups and things of that nature. And so what I was really trying to do is just let everyone in the town know what I'm doing. And again, it's not public, but hey, I'm in the process of transitioning, just so I can get as many cheerleaders on my side as possible. Because Rockwell is a pretty close-knit community. And, there's not a ton of financial advisors out here. There are, but a lot of them office in Dallas. So my main focus for that kind of 6-month transition period was just, again, not being snaky or anything, but letting people know, like, I'm in the process of a transition. And this is kind of the time frame, just so people knew what was going on, and knew I was going to be starting my own business. So networking is no, flip a switch and you're just going to start getting business at all. It took, I'd say, a good year to start making solid ground in the community. People want to know that you're going to be consistent. You're not just showing up to a networking event and they'll never see you again. And once you start building these bonds and friendships. And so I think that was probably the most beneficial thing I did kind of in that waiting period is I'm just being a huge advocate, ambassador for the decisions that we're making. And again, you have to be a little um, strategic when you're doing that because I still didn't want my firm to know for. And again, my firm was fantastic. I have nothing but great things to say about them. But again, I was trying to do what was best for me and my family as well.
Yeah, and
Yep.
I want to make sure I didn't set any kind of a false expectation. My situation was somewhat unique. Uh, let's see, 14 years ago, I made the decision to step away from a position at a bank. I was their investment services specialist.
Oh,
And
wow.
I went into my boss at that time and said, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. I haven't really made up my mind yet, but I wanted to give you an advance notice. Very, very nice guy. He didn't do anything wrong, but he said, that's great to hear. I'm really happy for you, Ryan. Here's a box. If you'll please go ahead and pack up your desk and then call us when you've made up your mind. Legalities sometimes, it's just there's too much confidential information on your computer that if they let you linger around for a while, it becomes a security issue. So if it does become made public, or if you do say something to your boss or your company, just be ready that they may, from a compliance standpoint, have to say, we're happy for you, but we can't let you stay. So just before you really do make that call, make sure you got your ducks in a row.
In our industry, that's very common.
Yeah.
You could say, hey, I'll stick around much more than even a 2-week notice. And usually it's, we need to walk you out. And it's just nothing personal, but that's how it goes.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did have a question about, how to leave your firm on good terms. And I think it sounds like you can do the best that you can, but you have to be prepared for any conversation that you have to maybe just might be the last day.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay,
Sure.
we do have a question of what did you tell clients as to why you left your previous firm? My current book will transfer to the advisor next to me at my current firm, so I know they will be calling on those clients straight away. Any thoughts on that, Ryan?
Yeah, so this is my opinion of it, but do everything possible to be above board and to always take the high road. Your clients, they will recognize that. And I've done everything in my power to make sure if clients ask me about my prior firm, I always speak positively about them. I usually have a follow-up response though as to why I think it's going to be even better if they continue working with me. But I would not ever recommend that you ever try and throw your prior firm under the bus, even if they deserve it, simply because of the reputation and the integrity that your clients are going to want to continue to see in you. And if you're throwing your prior firm under the bus, it's just kind of setting you up for a poor reputation going forward. So, like I say, always stay above reproach. Always take the high road. And even if your firm is, if they start doing things to try and run your name through the mud for some reason, just don't jump in the mud with them. Just continue to take the high road.
Yep. Oh, that's great. Gerald, what do you think?
Yeah, so it wasn't so much clients, but it was for me. It was future clients. Hey, why'd you leave your previous firm? And for me, it was a bit of succession planning. I love the previous firm that I was at. However, in the Dallas area, getting on the other side of town, the commute was an hour. A lot of the current clients that at the firm that I was at were at average age was between 60 and 80. So it just wasn't a good fit. So instead of taking or maybe inheriting kind of a dying book in some sense, I was like, why not just start my own firm and build the book that I want with the people that, are going to be the best fit for me. Mm-hmm. So again, much like you said, Ryan, nothing but compliments to the other firm or my previous firm, but just being honest with them, like, hey, the succession plan that we originally had in mind just wasn't the best fit for me moving forward. So, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. We did have a question about that. Why don't we hit that now? How did you know when a succession plan isn't working? So it sounds like that happened to you, Gerald. Do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah. So, of course, when you're interviewing with with a firm when I was going from personal capital, which is, they provided all my clients and leads and things work, but I was going to independent RIA, and I was very excited about. And the plan was an aging advisor was going to kind of fade off, and I was going to step in, right? And we didn't really work the details out of, am I going to buy the book or sweat equity? But all that was kind of hidden details until I came on board. And then again, the succession plan just didn't fit what I had imagined originally. So I stuck around for probably a year and a half, anyways. But yeah, with a very old book, I would say, being an hour away, I was like, I do not want to commute. I would much rather, get clients on board that I bring on board instead of inheriting clients. So I just found out a lot of the things that I wanted, and this current firm, again, nothing but respect for them. They didn't have what I wanted. So
Mm-hmm.
that's my experience of a succession plan that didn't work out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan, do you have any additional thoughts on that?
Earlier on in my career, I actually was a part of 3 different succession plan opportunities. Maybe I'm a slow learner because all 3 of them fell apart. But the reasons for mine, or I guess you could say the reasons when, or the ways I knew when they were sort of failing or falling apart, was when timelines kept getting bumped further and further out, or when things we had agreed upon, they just weren't holding up their end of the arrangement or the bargain. And so I don't have anything negative per se to say about the situation, because in each case I did pick up clients along the way. I gained experience from the person that I was working with. I just gained experience from working where I was at. But I can't say I've had a lot of success with succession plans.
Yeah.
Oftentimes advisors, as they get older and further into their career, retirement sounds like a good idea, but I think the closer they get to it, the further out they push it, because for various reasons. So just be careful with succession planning, and just really make sure that you and whoever it is you're going to be stepping into their book or taking over for, you have a very, very solid agreement with a very well defined timeline,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can hold them to it. And if they don't hold up their end, this isn't working,
Yeah.
and it's time to step away.
Get it in writing.
Get it in writing. Yeah.
That's a benefit to our industry, though. It's honestly, if you put in the work up front, a lot of times you can work until your mid 70s or even later. A lot of times, so
Yeah.
again, it's a good problem for us to have as advisors.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, we've got a question about revenue. So what was the difference between your projected first year gross revenue and your actual gross revenue? Do you feel like you were too aggressive with your revenue projections? Ryan, how do you see that going for you so far?
I'll let you know.
Okay, great.
No, in my case, being a little bit different probably. So far, again, 4 months into it, I'm pretty well on track. I may be a little ahead of schedule, but that was just because I transitioned the clients over quicker than I anticipated. If I was starting from scratch, though, and Gerald, maybe you can speak a little bit more to that, I'm sure that there's a lot more moving parts that are unknown variables in advance. But so far, I could say that I'm on track with what I expected, but I think my numbers were a little bit easier to calculate and to run out on a timeline.
Yep. Well, Gerald, what does it look like for you? Starting with nothing.
Yeah. So, and I'll be very transparent. Starting with literally a $0 book, it's very scary. Again, you have to run your numbers, do all that up front. And so, but the first year, and maybe I'm just overly confident, or, whatever the case may be, but I was like, first year, you know, conservative estimate would be, hopefully 70,000, right? I came in way under FY. So again, it was closer to 20,000. So I don't think there's even a entry level job out of college. You don't make $20,000. So again, that is why it's so important to have your spouse, if you're married, on board and run. I say run worst case scenario. What if you actually lose money your first year?
Mm-hmm.
You don't you maybe get 1 or 2 clients and your expenses put you in the red. Run those numbers, because with the question, way too aggressive in my projections. And again, it didn't set me back too far. I realized, hey, this is not going to be as easy as I thought it was, because it's not easy whatsoever. My average AUM per client is not what I thought it was going to be, and again, it's getting bigger and bigger every month, every year, because the tickets are bigger. But yeah, so I thought 70, actually was closer to about 20. I think it was 21,000 or so.
Yeah.
My wife's like, "Are you sure you made the right decision?" I was like, "Hey, give me time." I told her, I was like, "Give me 2 years." And even after 2 years, I'm not where I want to be, but of course, you can see things trending in the right direction.
Yeah, and Gerald,
Mhm.
you alluded to this earlier about how we have these expectations in mind that, all right, I'm going to find a client, make them a client, bring in assets, and there's my revenue.
Yep.
As many of you, listening probably know good and well, once you find that prospective client, I mean, it's months usually
Yeah.
before you even get your first paycheck, if you want to call it that, from the business
Yep.
you do with them. So that first year can be really tough, and definitely build in a lot of cushion and wiggle room for just the time it takes to generate new clients and then to generate revenue from those new clients. But yeah, I mean, it's one of the neat things though. When you wake up every January 1 to start the new year, you don't start from scratch. You don't start
Yes.
all over again like back in the old commission days of the industry. As long as you're doing it right and you're taking good care of your clients, you wake up every January 1 just simply building off of what you've already been working on. That's pretty rewarding, I got to say.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We have another question from that someone submitted before. Who shouldn't consider starting their own firm? Can you think of someone that wouldn't be a good entrepreneur? Ryan, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so my comments on that one is it requires a lot of commitment and a lot of dedication. Um, when you wake up in the morning and there's no boss that's telling you what to do, and there's no accountability to someone who's going to hold your feet to the fire to make sure that you do what you're supposed to do that day, uh, you just got to have a lot of self discipline. So anybody who just deep down in your own gut, I'm just not a real driven person, or I have a hard time motivating myself to do what I need to do. Again, just being completely honest, probably not for you. But if you are a driven person, you're somebody who's really good at setting goals, sticking to them, holding yourself to them, absolutely. It's one of the most rewarding things you'll ever do. And through XYPN, there's also great networking opportunities to meet up with other professionals that they can help hold you accountable and you can help hold them accountable. A lot of great ways to do it so that you're not out there on your own or feeling like you're alone as you work through this.
Yeah. No, that's really great. Gerald, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with everything you said, Ryan. You have to be driven, but and again, this is just from my experience and maybe my perspective. But if you have very little experience from the compliance side, like with me, I got to see compliance from broker dealer world, RIA world. I was even, in brick and mortars, and it's, if someone brings a check in, um, if you have to mail anything, you know, whatever it is, like you have to know these little things from a compliance perspective, or it's and stay organized, or it's going to be pretty rough on you when you get audited. So, being organized is huge, and being able to kind of keep a level head, not get too stressed out, because when I'm starting from zero, trying to bring clients on in the middle of at the beginning of 2022, I get a letter from Austin saying you're being audited, and I'm like, I don't even have any assets to audit. What do you mean? But they require attention to detail, and they suck a lot of time out of your day. So it's just being able to juggle, getting audited, bringing clients on, um, managing a portfolio, or the TAMPs that are managing the portfolio. You're wearing a lot of hats, especially at the beginning of course, I want to get to a place where I can hire an operations or admin worker. Just not there yet. I'm trying to pay myself back for some of those first few years. Um, but yeah, it's just having a sense of what to expect from a compliance perspective is going to be huge. If you are going into this with no experience whatsoever from that angle, um, you're going to be really, really drinking out of a water hose. And I'm already drinking out of a water hose, and I've had that experience. So,
Good point.
Yeah. I think so. I think too, though, we can surprise ourselves, right? Like I was a commercial lender for 7 years before I changed careers to go to XY. And so I went to a bank every day from 7:30 to 5:30. I never thought I could work from home and be productive. Then
yeah.
I joined XY in the pandemic, and now I can't imagine ever not working at home. So I just think that the nice thing, especially about the XY community, about financial advisors in general, is they're so willing to share their experience. So if you're not sure if entrepreneurship is
100%.
for you, like have the conversation with 100 different people, and they can walk you through what their day looks like, why they're good at being an entrepreneur, why it appeals to them. Like don't get discouraged immediately. I think there's a lot of due diligence you can do to find out if it might be the right fit, and maybe you'll be surprised. And I just think there's a lot of pathways that you can take, and just knowing the members like we have on today, they're all willing to chat with you about it. So if that's a question of if you're the right person to start your firm, just have this conversation 10 times. And I think people will help you see.
And use the resources. I'll tell you, you're spot on, Amy. My biggest hurdle was compliance. I was like, how am I going to manage compliance and get my ADV updated and compliance manuals and privacy policies and social media like there are so many things that you have to do, but XY Planning makes it so easy. They have the templates, and you just kind of go in and make it your own. Um, I There was someone I was very worried about getting audited. Someone in our community within the resources basically posted everything that they asked for, and it was almost to a T exactly what I got emailed. So again, I already had a heads up what her experience was. So again, there's anything that you might be questioning, you're absolutely right that we've all had those questions before. So I mean, go in that. I forget what it's called. The
CIP
community,
Facebook group.
the Facebook group, but also
Yep.
the resource library,
Oh, sure.
and it is just filled with questions to utilize. So
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've got one about the CFP designation. So I don't have the CFP designation, but I've been in the industry for 4+ years. Can I build my solo practice while I prepare for the exam? Have either of you gone through this? Ryan, you're a CFP, right?
Yes, I am. And I can actually speak personally to this one. So prior to my prior firm, I actually had another firm years ago that I had started up, but it was with a broker dealer. I was trying to get that firm up and running, trying to get that practice going, build a book of business. We had a baby. I think it was our third was on the way. And I tried to get my CFP at the same time. I would tell you that it can be done. I don't recommend it. Especially if you are already like at a firm with a good, steady, consistent income. I would highly recommend knock that CFP out first, then focus your attention on starting an RIA. It's not that you can't do both at the same time. It's just both of them will require quite a bit of time and commitment, and you're not going to be doing either one of them at 100% if you try and do them both at the same time. So that would be my advice. I did it. Clearly, it's possible. I don't have any hair left as a result. It can be done. I wouldn't recommend putting that kind of stress on yourself.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Gerald, what do you think? Even the CDFA, did you do that while you were working or while you were launching your firm?
yeah, I did that towards the end of my previous firm. So, and again, that's not nearly as strenuous as the CFP. I don't have my CFP. It's a designation that I do want to pursue. And again, I don't think there's ever a perfect time. Just say I'm gonna do it this year because of how much time it does require. But um, Do I think you can do it? Yes. But again, and again, I might be biased. I don't think me not having the CFP has affected my business. I mean, again, might just be me or my experience, but I want it. Yes, I don't think it's affected my business. But can you do it? I think so. But to Ryan's point, it's gonna it's gonna take away a lot of your time. I mean, usually that's a 2-year program, and it's nights and weekends you're studying. So,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah. Maybe if you're still single and you're just
yeah,
doing the business and doing the CFP and you got nothing else going on.
yeah. I have 3 kids married,
Yeah.
and so again, it's a huge sacrifice. Will I get it? Yes. It's got to be the right time in your life. If
Yeah.
you're young, single, no kids, you might be able to knock that out while doing your
Mhm.
solo practice. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
They
one
both
quick
take a lot of time and energy.
yeah, and one quick little plug though, Gerald. This one's even for you, I guess. I've taken a lot of tests for a lot of licenses. I did the 7 and 66, all the insurance stuff. I just wanted to make sure I had everything that could ever be needed in case a client need a road. Of all the tests and all the exams I've ever done, I would actually, I mean, this sounds kind of goofy. I'd go back and do the CFP again right now.
yeah,
I learned so much from that test process, from that studying process that I use every single day.
yeah.
It was very hard. It took a lot of time. It was a grueling test. I think when I took it, it was like 7 hours long over 2 days. I don't know what it is now, but it was worth every bit of it. The information you get, you will use. It's not like the 7 where you kind of pump it, dump it, forget it. You will use what you learn in that exam process or that designation every day. So I do highly recommend it.
That's great to hear. Well, while we're on that topic, then, Ryan, we did have a question about, did you have a license that you were paying to give up? For example, the Series 7. It's hard for some people to think about, having to study for that test, take it, pass it, and then once they have their RIA, then lose it, and maybe someday have to do it again. Was that hard for you? And then we did also get a question about, were annuity and insurance part of your previous business? So maybe we can talk about both of those things.
Yeah. So I'll start with the license side of it. Yes, I did have my Series 7 and 66. That was a horrible test. I did not enjoy that at all. So when the thought of starting, a fee-based RIA came up and having to drop my 7, as part of that conversation or that decision, it was hard to drop that, to think about giving that up. This kind of goes back to maybe what we started with, though. It's all about why you're doing it. And at the end of the day, what I get versus what I gave up, the benefits far outweigh the costs. And so I have no reservations or hesitation about dropping my 7. And I also know that push comes to shove, worst case scenario, if I need to do it, I need to pick it back up for some reason in the future. I've done it once. It wouldn't be pleasant, but I could do it again. So yes, it's worth it. It's a hard call to make, but I don't think you'll regret it at all. Annuity business and commissionable business, I did have a portion of that, but in my entire career, I've always tried to push things more towards fee-based and fee-only anyway. So I didn't have a lot that I had to give up, but that is kind of hard to sort of bite that bullet and just know you're cutting that off going forward. Again, though, it's all about the price you may pay, but the benefits you're going to get, I think, far outweigh what you're giving up.
And logistically, with your book that you did bring, Ryan, was there anyone that had an annuity that you had to leave behind, or did they have an annuity that you had to figure out what to do with? Like, how did that look for you?
Yeah, so a couple of them do. They had some annuities that we had maybe built into like a retirement income type scenario that they have. And just because you give up the compensation on it doesn't mean you can't still advise on it. So don't kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater on that one. I don't want to cross a compliance line here, but you can sort of build that advice into your fee-based planning that you do for them. You just can't get paid the compensation from the commissions anymore. So
Yeah.
just have that conversation with your client. Make sure that they know what they're going to be paying you for and what advice you're going to be giving for what they're paying. But yeah, just because you give up the commissions on it doesn't mean you can't still advise the client on it going forward.
Great. That's really helpful. Jared, how about you? Did you have a Series 7 or anything you had to give up? And then did you do any insurance or annuity before you started your RIA?
Yeah, so much like Ryan, had the Series 7, and it was painful to give up. I took the Series 7 when you could score a 72 and pass. I think I was like one of the last test takers that could score 72, and I got a 72 on the dot. So I barely passed it. I think that made it even harder to just step away from it. I was like, I barely got this thing. But no, I probably lost a little bit of sleep over losing the license, but again, it's one of those things. If I, which I do, if even if I, for some reason, wasn't running my own RA, I would work for an RA in the area. And again, it's not necessary to have that license. So, although it definitely stings to give it up, just because I barely passed the dang thing, um, it's kind of like what Ryan said. It's not necessary with the practices we're running, and I even got my insurance licenses. And again, great experience. I don't recall everything I learned there, but I don't need the insurance licenses either. So I've let those expire as well. So yeah, it stings a little bit, but yeah, I hated losing it, like the question says there. So
Yeah.
as far as the annuities and things of that nature, I never offered that in my previous firm, and so I don't really have an answer for that. Although I could imagine that'd be tough to step away from.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, it's just one tiny sacrifice. You'll get so much in return.
I
Let's
do agree
see.
with that.
Yes. So, what is one question no one has asked that you think we should have? That we think you should have. So, we were talking about this a little bit before the webinar. That this could also be like, what's one thing that you wish that you had known before you started? Gerald, do you want to start us with that?
Um, yeah. So I kind of already answered a little bit as far as the income. So
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm a confident person. I set lofty goals for myself and my wife, and it's just having that runway is so important. I know um, if you don't have it, it's going to create a lot of stress on you, and you would almost be coming off desperate to clients, and that's or prospects. That's the last thing you want because they can hear your desperation, like you need this client instead of them really needing you. So again, I learned that not necessarily the hard way because I did set up the runway. Other things. Uh, we have to have the spouse on board. And again, I don't know, and maybe this is a little steering away from the question, but at first, like anyone, I didn't, like a lot of people, I didn't have a niche. I was taking, you've heard the quote, anyone that's breathing, I was bringing them on. I don't regret doing that, but I'm now at a point where I've set minimum, not necessarily a minimum, but I explain when it makes sense to work with me to a client. And I want to eventually maybe transition some of those, first year clients to maybe someone that's better geared towards them. So
Mm-hmm.
again, I've learned a lot over the first 2 years, but everyone's circumstances are going to be different. So it is hard, but the one thing I will stress to everyone is make sure you have that financial runway, or it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely. Ryan, what do you think?
I would completely agree with what Gerald's saying. And the only thing I'll add, we've actually already discussed a little bit, and XYPN does a great job of emphasizing this as well, is just really, really, really know your why. Know why you're doing this, why you decided to take the hard road. Because I promise you, even in the best case scenarios, you're going to have tough days. You're going to have disappointments. You're going to have obstacles that at times may seem impossible to overcome. And if you're not truly committed to your why, you'll give up. But
Mm-hmm.
even on the hardest days, I mean, I got up this morning, made pancakes for my girls, had breakfast with them, got to help out with some of their homeschooling throughout the day. I'm headed here in just a little bit to one of my daughter's soccer practice or to one of my daughter's soccer games, and then a date with my wife tonight. And in between all that, I get to fit in my practice, my job, and my business that otherwise would have been impossible with the prior firm I was with. As hard as some of the things may be that have come up this week or that I'll have to deal with, man, waking up knowing the flexibility and the freedom of what I have easily pushes me forward every day to continue doing this and to be committed to this. So just really know your why, and it won't seem like a struggle at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, and I think having more runway than you think you're going to need, I mean, you just want to give yourself every opportunity to make this work, right? So if you only prepared for 1 year and you can maybe see at the year end, like maybe if you give 2 years or 3 years, like you could have made it work, like that's always going to eat you up of like, oh, if I would have just had a little bit more, I maybe could have made it work. Like just make sure you've done everything you can so that you give yourself the best opportunity to like be successful if this is truly your dream, right?
Yeah. I'd say with all of our experience, or if with your licenses, like me and my wife talked about worst case scenario, and you've mentioned this already, Ryan. Worst case scenario, there are plenty of jobs out there for us.
Yeah.
So again, I want to say just take the leap of faith blindly. But worst case scenario, it doesn't work out. You're probably going to have a job within 2 or 3 months if you're really looking. And
Yeah.
so yeah, we're blessed, but again, jumping out on your own scary. It takes longer than expected, but I'd much rather be making, even if it's at a slower rate, I'd be rather be building my book than making someone else rich.
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. What is something that you've done to stay positive as you've launched your RAs? Do you have mastermind study groups? Do you have, I mean, what is something that's worked for you, Gerald?
That's a great question, and I even thought about this at the last question. But it's have some type of community or tribe that you're a part of. I mean, I'm very involved with like different organizations. They're not necessarily financial advisors out here, but like with the Rotary and the Rockwall Chamber of Commerce. I mean, these are my people. I can talk to them. Like I office out of the Rockwall Chamber of Commerce building, so it's a little different than officing out of home where you can get up and you go to the refrigerator and not have anyone to talk to. Here, I can, if I want to talk to someone, I can just go office over, but just find a way to have some type of community. And even with the XY network and the community, I mean, I've set in on a few different monthly groups and they are fantastic. There's a lot of value and they're spread out from all over the country, but they have the same problems and the same challenges and the same success stories as you. And it's great just to celebrate with someone. And at the end of the day, even like share your sad stories with like we all lose clients every once in a while or get told no, and it's nice knowing that hey, I'm not the only one that's getting told no or losing a client, or the market tanked last year. Like we're all having those same challenges, so surround yourself with a mastermind group or community that can help share those experiences with.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan, what about for you?
I would tell you to be very realistic with your expectations because otherwise you're kind of setting yourself up to disappoint yourself. So be very realistic with your expectations. But for myself and my wife and I, when it comes to this business and the firm, and she was on board 100% with everything I've done, but we sort of set small milestones, and they may seem trivial or maybe they financially don't really matter, but they were milestones that we knew I had to overcome or I had to achieve and reach. And then we really celebrate those milestones. So even if it's something as simple as, all right, of all these households I got to bring over, every time I bring over 10 accounts, we're going to celebrate that. Or every time we raise $1 million in AUM, we're going to celebrate that. And like I say, it may not seem like much, but if you're just constantly celebrating every achievement you make, it really does drive you to continue to further those achievements, to reach the next one, to set more goals that you can achieve. So I would definitely recommend doing that.
I love that. Celebrate. Well, I think that's an amazing note to end on. Thank you, Gerald. Thank you, Ryan, so much. I feel like we covered a lot of ground today, and I hope everyone has something they can walk away with that's going to be helpful in launching their own firm. If you would like to talk to XYPN a little bit more, we will drop a link in the chat to register to have a conversation with one of our network navigators to find out more. And otherwise, be sure to join us next month for our next free webinar. Thank you both so much.
Yes,
Absolutely.
thank you so
Thanks,
much.
y'all. Yeah, enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. See you next time.